We are in this culture able to leave an unhappy love relationship, even if it's very painful. And I'm not here to say there's no grieving when you leave a friend. So it's also about self reflection. Who am I in this friendship to stay?
Right.
When is it actually damaging to me? And then the new trend that emerges in my study is that we can estrange with a sense of power instead of failure.
Welcome to the Persistence U podcast with Lizbeth. That's you as in university, but we're really much more of a community here. Your host is Lizbeth Meredith. She's an author, speaker, and online teacher. Each week, she'll be delivering amazing stories from survivors and thrivers, all threaded together with a dose of persistence. We're so glad.
Really looking forward to introducing you to our next guest. On the topic of female friendships and when they become estranged, that is something that none of us talk about, happens to everyone. And I think as women, we talk so much more about when our romantic relationships and when our marriage, when some significant relationship like that falls to pieces, that we talk about a lot. But how we deal with friendships, long-term friendships that grow apart, that may end in a stormy fashion after a conflict, or quite frankly, just slowly by slowly start to fade away. What if that friendship means more to one person than it does to the other? I recently heard and I'm not sure if it was on a podcast or if I read it, but in your friendships, your friends either inspire you or they drain you. And I feel like some of that may be true, even though that's very simplistic, that may be true. And so who we keep in our sphere has got to be important. And sometimes when we revisit what it is that connects us, we may come up short. These are interesting conversations, and I think you're really going to get enjoyment out of it. Stay with us until the end and let me know what you think. I think there's a lot to learn, a lot to unpack in this conversation. So glad that you are here. And on that note, I have been reaching out to some of my female writer friends lately who I know I've had conversations with about certain things, about travel and resiliency and building resilience. And I'm so grateful for their support because putting together the anthology has been so much trickier than I could have even imagined. So just reminding myself to reach out for support when I need. And man, it has been a wonderful process ever since I remembered to do that. Listen, I will see you at the end of the episode. For sisters and brothers, I'm just about to record with Susan Shapiro Barash, or maybe Barash. She's an established writer of more than 10 nonfiction books, typically covering women's issues. And she's written for Psychology Today, the Huffington Post, Wall Street Journal. But it's what her most recent book is about that fascinates me so deeply. It's called Estranged, and it is about the ending of female friendships. Susan Shapiro Barash, I am so thankful to have you. And please say the last name again because I got it wrong earlier. Barash. Okay, good. I am thrilled to have you. And such an interesting conversation about your newest book, Estranged. Can you give us just a little bit about you before? I always love to know the story behind the story. So what got you interested in writing about women's issues? And specifically this?
Well, I've long been intrigued by the faces women wear versus how they really feel. And I think in a patriarchal culture, there's so much pressure for women to hold it all together,
Right.
to not be judged, but to just seem as if we breeze through, but we don't. We feel deeply and we struggle. And our female friends are supposed to be the safety net and the safe haven in a very complicated life for women. And so you asked what made me interested in women's issues. This is my 14th nonfiction book. about how women are positioned in contemporary society. And until COVID, for many years, over 20 years, I taught in the writing department at Marymount Manhattan College. And the topic was gender. So I've been investigating how women feel as mothers, daughters, single women, rivals, and mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law. And I've been looking at what female rivalry does to us and why women keep so many secrets and don't feel safe to really explain how they feel. So Estranged is a book that I started about 6 or 7 years ago, but I was under contract for my novels because I write fiction that reflects my nonfiction research under my pen name, Susanna Marin. So about 2 years ago, I was hearing so many stories of estrangement and women of all ages really, even in a locker room or a luncheon, just talking about the challenges of a really healthy, happy friendship and how when it goes wrong, we feel as if we failed. And I thought it's time to really take a look at what's going on.
I mean, I think that's such a great topic. Women, our friendships are so important to our success in many, many ways, but there are many different factors that come between our friendships. What are some of the ones that you have really focused on, the top 3 that you hear about?
Well, let me say that for this book, as for all my nonfiction, I interviewed this time 150 women, sometimes more, but always at least 100 women to hear, because they're guaranteed anonymity, to hear their stories and to find out what really went on, to dig deep. So for a diverse group of women. So for this study, the women are between the ages of 20 and 80. And curiously, what bothers us at 25 can still make us uneasy at 75. And so I found that really fascinating. We live longer, but we're always seeking these friendships. And as life changes, we often meet new friends and our circumstances change. And so that idea of being with a friend who reflects our experience is often the case. And then, of course, you said, what are the big problems?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that we're all familiar with the green-eyed friend, the friend who is not really 100% there for you because she's jealous or envious. And so I look at that. And I look at the disparaging friend. I have 7 categories, 7 chapters about these types of friends. And the disparaging friend, a friend who doesn't really treat you well in front of others, or if you're in a group, a lot of women are in a group of friends. And so it's even more threatening to be uneasy or to have an unhealthy friendship within that group. So the friend who disparages you and shows no respect. And then, of course, betrayal. There were so many women who spoke of being betrayed. Very big stories about betrayal and how we recover and how it's really healthy to leave those friendships.
Okay. And when people what are some of the things that, in your opinion, I know we're at some points we're just talking opinion, but when do we have signs that it is time to move beyond this friendship? I have friendships that I've had since grade school still. And yet then junior high school, every job, all of that. Some people collect friendships and I try not to lose them, but sometimes it's time to lose them. What are some of the thoughts you have on when is it time to move on?
When you feel dread in making a plan with this friend, when the friend has really not been faithful to you, when the friend has put someone else between you. Often women find a new partner and it is too triangulated, and the partner might not like you, or somehow you yourself, as the person with the new partner, feels that this friend is no longer as necessary or as important. So when something gets between you that's very major, then it's time to rethink it. And we talked about betrayal before. Or if you just can't handle your friend's situation. I interviewed women who said, this woman is my dear friend, but she's had an addiction for the last 12 years, and I can't be the enabler anymore. So it's also about self-reflection. Who am I in this friendship to stay?
Right.
When is it actually damaging to me? And then the new trend that emerges in my study is that we can estrange with a sense of power instead of failure.
I like that. And how do you have those conversations? Because we as women, we are complex. We feel the feelings. We are multi-layered. How are some good ways to leave if a person determines they need to? What is a way to leave empowered rather than decimating someone else or feeling completely bereft?
It's really it's by honesty, being honest with yourself. We are in this culture able to leave an unhappy love relationship, even if it's very painful. And I'm not here to say there's no grieving when you leave a friend.
No.
Friend leaves you, even if it's time. So there is the cultural messaging that we need to stay with our friends, that we're best friends forever. And then all of the reasons. So interesting. So our mothers were friends. Even our grandmothers were friends. We belonged to the same church. We went to the same grade school. We both love water skiing, whatever. We did this together. We did that together. And then how about our children were friends? Our grandchildren even know each other. All different age women remarking on the connection without really facing the problems. And so there's a lot of feeling that we can't really give up on these friends. And then also a lot of sympathy toward the friend. She needs me. She's going into a very difficult time. She's coming out of a difficult time. She's stuck. She's this, she's that, and so the really salient question is, should we still be a pair? Because this book is not about like the friend you made in Pilates.
Right.
This is about a friend that is so close that you have counted on her and she has counted on you. So this is about very deep bonds that
Right.
in, fragmenting and in disarray.
I like it. That sounds really very, very important, an important read. It's also just important for women to recognize if we feel guilty about every single thing in a friendship or not being, I have, as I've gotten older, been very intolerant of people who want me to be their 911. I've worked for decades with people in crisis. So the last thing I want is to be on my off hours and someone to think they could call me at midnight or 2 a.m. or whatever with a story that never ends. It's not an emergency. It's an ongoing thing. So I've really put the brakes on some of that codependency and neediness. And, that's very important for me. So people all have to know, like, if you're someone who wants to be there constantly for the person, just know that you've sort of put yourself in that situation too. You have choices. And then you can't suddenly 5 years later say, I'm so mad. This is never about me. It's always about this person. Well, what did we get out of that dynamic? What power do we get from being someone's 911 call?
Yes, and the justifications again, we're stuck between what would I do without this female friend, and can you believe what she did?
Right.
Well, and so we really need to face who we are, and then sometimes something is so dramatic, a lot of exclusion. I heard stories. I didn't get invited to her son's graduation. I don't understand now that she's moved to a big house and has a different life, why she suddenly doesn't want to see me. Or my best friend still works in the city and is single. And, here I am. She doesn't understand my schedule. She expects me to still meet her for drinks at 6 o'clock. And I live now in the suburbs. So where you're no longer really in sync. And the problem is that it becomes the heart of the matter.
Right.
So at first, it's just attention, which is not good anyway. But trust is a big issue. I mean, I interviewed some young women who said that, and actually a woman in a kind of senior living situation. And they said that their friends, sort of went after the partner they had just, a new partner for them. And that's really without trust. That
Right.
respect for boundaries. So we learn who we are in these friendships, and we also learn who the friend is.
I like that. I like that. I had written one time about female friendships that it is sometimes important to clean out our closets. And I mean our friendship closet, and to look at, does this relationship, is it a give and take, or is it a give and give and give and give? Or am I taking and taking and taking and taking? I've been in a crisis myself where it lasted years and I had to really force myself. Sometimes I would write on my hand, ask how she is before we got on the phone, because I would only think about me.
Because something was going on that was so serious probably for you
Right.
at the moment. Well, that happens too. And that goes to the give and take. But I do ask at the beginning of the book, has she changed or have I? That's the title of the preface. And that's really important because we don't always grow together with a friend any more than we do with a lover.
Right.
And again, the societal messaging is that's okay with the lover. Of course you grew up, painful as it is. Or we had disparate values. And that brings me to another issue in the book. And I have a chapter on diametrically opposed values because since the last two elections, and of course, because of COVID and vaccine, I interviewed women who really talked about how values became disparate values, not having the same values, became the center of the friendship. And some women felt they could no longer be with their friend who didn't look at the world the same way. So that's sort of new.
Right.
Because it's so divisive. It's so different than it's been in the past. So we see that too. And, in terms of statistics, I have a questionnaire. So 150 women interviewed for the book, and then another 111 in a questionnaire at the back of the book. And some of my stats are that over 85% of women said that they had had an issue with a friend at some point. And 67% said that they had had a breakup.
Right.
So that's very interesting to us, as women, to know that this is pervasive. It's really happening.
Right. And I would question the people who say that they haven't had any problems or friendship.
What about over 60% said they wanted to leave a friend behind?
Wow.
So that just shows us how precarious it is to leave and how we, at the same time, really hope to do it.
Right.
What happens is there's the estranger, the person who estranges, and the estrangee, which is the person who is at the receiving end of the estrangement. And in some stories, both estranger and estrangee, despite the pain of it, knew they were better off after.
Wow. And my hope is always, I even said this in the introduction before you came on, my hope is we could, if a relationship is estranged, we could still at some point heal enough to look back and remember the great times instead of it staying so painful that the whole thing becomes something we can't think about.
Well, this book is, of course, the interviews, and per chapter, I just want to say, I was able to get she said. So I one long interview with both sides.
We love it. That has to be very interesting.
That was really interesting. And then I also was able to get one sister interview per chapter because I had written a book on sisters called Sisters Devoted or Divided many years ago. And in that book, I heard that some sisters felt they didn't have the same need for a close female friend or a group of female friends because they were so close with their sister or sisters. So what I wanted to hear about was when there's a breakup or tremendous tension in a sister relationship, is it similar? And it's really very similar to a best friend. So many of these friends in this book said, oh, we were like sisters.
Mm.
So that was really interesting too.
One thing I'm finding as I get older and grouchier is that I have two daughters, so it is kind of funny you bring that up. But
Daughters.
pardon?
I have two daughters.
You do, yeah. Those are complicated relationships. They're very.
You have a son too?
No, I have just two daughters.
I have a son in the know.
Oh, awesome. Someone to dilute. That's good. But I find that if in any friendships, I don't want to pick on my kids, but if one person prides themselves on having one bestie or one sister in their household that they're very, very close to, and they kind of don't need that many friendships, and the other person thinks otherwise, it puts an undue amount of stress on the person who has other social outlets. And I see that.
Your form of imbalance. You know what that is? That's very much like a group of friends.
Mhm.
In the group of friends, and I look at this in the book, there's hierarchy. So these two, everyone's friends, maybe there's 7 or 8 women in the group, all ages. I'm with groups. But then within the group, these two friends are known as kind of besties. And
Right.
so, and then how does that work? And that gets, and who expects what? Which is what you're talking about.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Expectation in friendship is a very big part of it.
Right.
You know, what do we expect from our friends and what can they deliver? One woman, probably in her early 40s, with whom I spoke, said to me, look, I now have little kids and my friend who doesn't thinks I'm not there for her. But the truth is, I barely think straight. One woman said, you know, I depend on the women who carpool. I can't depend on that friend anymore. She's back in this life and I'm on this life now. So we have to really cut each other some slack too.
Exactly. Exactly. I do feel like the different stages of life, even if you're the same age as your friend, but you're in different seasons. I had my kids a little bit younger than I meant to.
I too.
And then my friends, I thought, oh man, my high school friends, they would still go do fun things. They'd be in their 30s and going on trips very easily. And I think, well, hang in there, guys, because when I'm 42, they'll both be grown. And sure enough, my friends had kids in their 40s and late 30s. And suddenly, I wasn't very supportive about going to tiny toddlers' birthday parties and stuff. I mean, I tried to be interested, but I didn't have, I wasn't there. I wanted to do fun things.
You were over it. But I do think there is something to the fact that of the theory of homogamy, which is like with like.
Right.
And we even older women, retired women, they're the women who say, my daughter wants me to take care of the grandchildren. And
Right.
quite honestly, I'm here with my friends. And then some of the other women say, oh no, children come first. So they can't even keep the momentum going if there's some, always because they have different, again, loyalties or values.
It's so true.
So we see this happen. But 75% of the women of all ages in this book told me that they found estranging from a particular friend to be a positive experience. And that's really something that leads us to much healthier bonds. If we keep the one with some knowledge and having learned, then we do better for the new friends.
I like that. I mean, if we can incorporate those experiences and help inform our next relationships, that can be a beautiful thing. And I know just with, there's a lot said about the downsides of getting older. But one thing for me is like at about 60, even before I turned 60, I was like, I now tell people when I moved by myself after my kids were grown. So I moved a couple years ago across the country. And I would tell new friends, like, I am a troll. I like to write. I like to go to movies by myself. And I like to see my friends no more than maybe once or twice a month. And then after 3 hours, I literally turn into a pumpkin. But I'm just much more, you know yourself better when you get older and you know your boundaries. And it's not that I'll never extend myself for a friend. I will, but much more limitation than when I was in my 20s.
And at the same time, I agree that we know ourselves better and life experience is a great teacher. and an equalizer, but we also still can make an error.
Yes.
In trusting, or a situation could surprise us. I interviewed a woman who was widowed and lived in a community where there was a lot of coupling. She was probably 58, 60, and she joined the widows group, but it was very competitive. And, everyone was looking for sort of the next, answer for those who
Right.
wanted it. And she represented competition. So, and then she said her sympathetic friends who were married all were very kind and embraced her right at the loss, but not later.
Right.
They said it was a very coupled society in which she lived, and we all live in a big coupled society.
True.
Oh, that really is something that, even later in life, oh, wow, here I am, I'll be fine. But maybe you're not. Maybe
Right.
your best friend is there for you until there's some shape shifting. So these are all the things to look at and to really understand.
I like it. I think personally, I like to look at my own expectations too, because there are times when I've expected my friends to mind read. Like,
We don't. Right. So that too. So I think that we need to be overt, not covert. We need to explain how we feel and to see, risk reward. You say to your friend, this is where I'm at, and you see if she can understand it and be there for you. And
Right.
vice versa. Right.
right. I like that very much, because our entire lives, we're going to need a community. We're going to need friendships. It's not a maybe. It's like, to me, it's the key to contentment is to have a community. On the other hand, we'll have to keep replenishing that for various reasons.
And I think that based on my research, the women, I mentioned this earlier, really hold the bar high as well with the friends, with our closest friends. So we have to ask ourselves, who are we in this dyad?
Right.
What do we bring in? And like you said, whose demand, to look at it that way. But women will always want to have close friends. And the best that we can do is to stay with the healthy friend, forge new friendships that are healthy, and to have the voice and agency to leave the ones that aren't behind.
I love that. Where can people find out more about you and all of your books, but especially Estranged? And not everyone's watching on YouTube, but if you have a copy, there it is. It's beautiful. I love your cover and title.
I do too. I really love
I
the
like it. Yes.
So the book is sold on Amazon and at indie bookstores.
Okay.
If you go to my website, you'll see where I will be. I'll be touring some. And yeah, that's it.
And your website is where?
Oh, SusanShapiroBarash.com.
SusanShapiroBarash.com. And the Barash is important in this website because there's another author who's very popular with the same name, Susan Shapiro. So I just want to differentiate that. I am so glad for this conversation today. It's so poignant, it's evergreen. And I think your book will really resonate with so many women who want to explore this topic without shame and guilt.
Without a sense of failure, but a
Yes.
sense of success.
Yes. I like that.
Happening. Yeah.
That is fantastic. Well, it was great to meet you today. And thanks for being on Persistence You.
Thank you.
Was I right or was I right? She is really a great interview, great conversationalist. And it's a lot to think about. Female relationships, we are complex beings, and female relationships continue to be layered. Our relationships with our sisters, our relationships with friends. So I think she brings a lot to the table with her research. I hope you agree. Thanks as ever. Share this with a friend if you enjoyed it.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's show. Thank you so much for listening. Now, to find out more, head on over to lameredith.com and be sure to hop on the mailing list too. If you've enjoyed this show, please leave a rating and review or share with a friend. And if you really, really liked it, Go ahead and subscribe so that you never miss another episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Persistence U with Lizbeth.